Hey everyone, here I have Meng's Spice Harvester from the new Dune Part 2 movie. As you can see, it's quite a small kit. It says, this is a mini-sized but detailed replica of the Spice Harvester in the film Dune. All terrain tracks can move to suit ground undulations. It's got renderings of the kit on the sides there. Some information about the harvester, a bit of lore, and the instructions on the back. So as you can see, it's quite a small kit, but plenty of parts. It'll probably be quite a simple build, just mainly a lot of the tank treads there, and the main body, the harvester. Some pretty nice detail here. Pretty good quality moulding. Don't see any flash or any problems there. A few loose parts that have come off the tree, but that shouldn't be a problem. And this looks like the front or the back parts of the hull there. And then finally, we've got a tiny little decal sheet, which looks like just the markings for the harvester that go on the side. Alright, so let's get building. Alright, so for part of the suspension system for the tracks, you've got these little pegs here that clip into these openings. I think you're just supposed to push them in. There you go. So it's got a little bit of movement to it, and it feels quite secure in there. So obviously no glue needed. And the track assembly has got these really annoying bits that you have to clean up on the ends of the top part and the bottom part, which will stand out quite a lot if you don't. So yeah, there's 16 bogies, so that's what, 32 pieces I've got to clean up. Okay, so that's all the tracks attached, and yeah, there is movement side to side and then up and down for each bogie, which of course has just been pushed in to the side there. And yeah, this is going to be really hard to paint, but since it's all pushed together, I'm just going to assemble everything and then worry about painting later. I might just pull these off and paint them separately. But that's that for now. Sits quite nicely. It's all very nice and flat, mostly. So this part attaches to the underside of the harvester to end up like that. But again, it's going to be really hard to paint all in here once that's constructed, so I'm just going to leave that off for now. Paint all these up and then attach that at the end. Okay, so that's all of the construction done. Now it's time to move on to painting. Alright, so to start off I'm going to spray on some primer, and instead of the usual black I'm going for Villeneuve Surface Primer German Red Brown. Because it's kind of a tank and it's desert based, I thought a nice kind of reddish brown undercoat primer would work quite well with some of the top coats. Alright, so with the primer down, it's time to start considering the base colours. And looking at the box and other reference pictures, it's quite a very sort of greyish brown metallic colour, obviously dusted with a lot of sand and dirt from all its harvesting days. So I think the first base coat I'm going to apply is a Vallejo Model Air Rust, which is a very similar colour to the primer, but it's just going to be a little bit lighter and a little bit paler, so I can start building up some more lighter tones for the final finish. Alright, so that's the rust done, and now the next layer is going to be this Vallejo Model Air Desert Tan, which is kind of a really nice flat greyish sand colour. Okay, so that's all of the spraying done. So starting out with a wash, I've got one of my favourite washes here, which is Vallejo Model Wash Oiled Earth, which is a really nice mix of browns, tans, greys, blacks, just all in a nice big sludge, which is really good for big mechanical things like tanks and spice harvesters. Now I often get asked about what sort of brushes I use, and it's a mixture. Most of the time I'm using, like for example this brush here, it's literally just the cheapest, nastiest brushes you can buy. It's like one of those shops that just sells bits of everything, and they just come in like packs of 5 or 6 brushes, mainly for kids, and they're like, $2 or $3 a pack, and that's just one of those. I don't expect it to last long. It's not really for fine detailed work, it's just for applying washes and paint to parts. And so I just mainly use really cheap disposable brushes, I usually find they get the job done. Every now and again I'll go out and buy a proper fancy brush, especially if I'm painting miniatures, but not using any of those at the moment. Now moving on to these little thumper things. I'm not quite sure what they're called, but these are the things that smashed into the sands to agitate the spice, bring it out into the surface to harvest. I'm not quite sure exactly what the technical mechanisms are. So now moving on to the main hull. Now we can try and get this wash to do some really cool things. Sometimes you tap into a bit of an orange vein, sometimes you get more of a brown. So hopefully we can get some really interesting patterns and colours coming out of this. So that looks quite orange there. Now it's gone to the more brownish. Because you just get little sort of clumped areas inside the wash. You can kind of mix them up with your brush. You just never know what you're going to get. There, so I've got some quite different, very subtle different colours going on there. I'm just going to cover the whole thing, just section by section. And one of the cool things about this wash is that as it starts to dry and gets a little bit more tacky, you can go back and just start tapping your brush into some of these panels just to bring out some sort of texture, make the wash kind of look a bit distressed, a bit weathered, and that just gets more effective the more it dries. So I'll just leave that for a little bit and carry on. I just want to try and make sure I get rid of all these little bubbles that stick to the surface, because they'll just dry as little dark spots, and I don't want that. Just tapping on that wash just as it gets more dry, a little bit more thick. So already you can start to see kind of a real random mottled pattern coming out of these panels. And yeah, so you can get a really kind of interesting, varied, weathered effect while you're doing a wash, all with one application. Oh, there's a really nice rusty bit come out of there. Did you see that? That's really nice. A little bit of spice building up on the surface there. Yeah, that's really nice. I want to find more orange in here. Yeah, there's a little bit. So I'm getting these really nice kind of dark effects around the edges. And I'm trying careful not to create any kind of like tide marks as it dries. You can just kind of wash or brush those away. There's a few lines around here I want to try and remove. I'll just go over that panel again. And in here. Tap some more over here as this starts to dry. So even though I wasn't painting panels, I'm still getting a little bit of variation in some of these panels just with the amount of wash that I'm applying or not applying. Now I'm just going in and fine-tuning some of this weathering. I'm not adding any more wash to the brush, I'm just riding out what's on the brush for as long as I can. Just to create a few more splotches of colour here and there. As you can see, this cheap brush is kind of starting to flay apart a little bit, but that's fine, it just adds to the randomness. You can see it, the wash lasts quite a while. I haven't added any to the brush in ages and it's still going. Now that it's starting to dry more, I can go in and start tapping a bit more and getting these really nice speckled textures. It looks like the brush has finally run out. Cool, so I'm just going to leave all of that to dry for a bit and then move on to the next step. Okay, so that's all of the sides covered with the oiled earth. On the front there, the sides, the back and the bottom. So now I think I want a few more of these little orange patches, like this one here was a happy accident from the oiled earth, but I want to do a little bit more deliberate orange specks here and there. So for that I'm going to use Vallejo Model Wash Rust. And now just to bring out a little bit more definition in some of these recessed areas using dark grey wash. And these little details at the front, which I can only assume are windows. Alright, so the next round I want to do a sand wash, and for that I've got Vallejo Model Air Sand Beige, and I've mixed that with a bit of water just to make it a really nice milky washy consistency. And I just want to put it in all the areas where sand is going to build up. So, like for example, in between all the tank treads, just in here, and let it soak in. I might have to do a couple of coats. But yeah, something like that. Because you tend to find in a lot of desert vehicles is that sand likes to sit in all the recesses. So it's kind of like a reverse detail wash, or instead of using dark panel liner, you use sand. And also placing it in areas where sand is going to build up over the main vehicle. Then just wiping the brush, and then I can use where it's spilled over a little bit just to drag it down to create a little bit of streaking. Alright, so that's all of the sand applied. And like with the other wash, I just dabbed on a bit of the wash over some of these panels just to lighten them up and add a bit of weathering and distressing there. And yeah, I really like how that's come out. It's really given the impression that there's sand build up, and it's a good sense of scale as well. Here's the front, all sanded up, side and the back. I might go and fix this up a little bit. It's a little bit overboard there. But before I do any more weathering, I'm going to apply the markings. Just 3 little ones there. And to fix those, I'm going to apply a bit of gloss varnish just with a brush where the decal needs to go. Apply the decal and then cover it up with matte varnish. And with the decal now set, just applying the matte varnish. Now the next step is to do a bit of dry brushing and a bit of streaking. And I'm going to use the sand beige that I used before, as well as mixing in a little bit of sand brown Vallejo model air, just to add a bit of colour variation. So I'm just going to get the colour on the end of a small flat brush, and then wipe away most of the paint on a paper towel. And then just start adding some streaking, just in a downwards direction. And I'll get a bit of the sands brown and do the same. It's probably quite hard to see what I'm doing here, but it's going to be very subtle. I just want to build up the layers, so I don't want to overdo it too much. So just gradually building it up. Alright, so that's all of the brushwork weathering complete. Now I'm just going to finish it off with a little bit of spraying, and I'm going to spray on some sand fading for the base of the treads and the harvesters, just using the sand beige that I used before. And I also want to spray on some exhaust along the back of the engines here, and for that I've found in my paints this German camo black brown, which is this really nice brownish black, just to indicate some real oily smoke coming out of the back there. Alright, so now it's time to put everything together. And for the wheels, I think I'm just going to glue them onto the arms because it's actually quite difficult to push these back into position to clip the pegs back into the slots because there's no way to push back on these bendy arms now that the top of the hull's been put in place, and every time I push down on this assembly it just pushes the tracks up, so I can't actually get any force behind it. So easy job. Just clip those away. I don't really need these to move or to swing side to side, so I'm not too bothered about gluing them. So that'll just fit into there, and need to apply some glue. Right, now to seal everything in, I'm going to give it a coat of matte varnish. And now just for one final detail, just got to paint these little floodlights at the front. First I'm just going to do a base coat of silver. And now just some yellow. Alright, so there it is, finally done and dusted, literally. And it's been a really enjoyable little project. I managed to get this done in 2 days, just a few hours spread over 2 days. So a quick weekend little project. And I was quite pleased with how little paints and washes that I needed to use. So just a few base coats, and then just the 3 washes, the oiled earth, the rust, and the sand wash. Oh, and then the dark grey for some of the engine-y bits. But yeah, it's overall it's been quite a simple process. Not that many colours needed, didn't need to do that much detailing. Just a lot of manipulating that wash, as you saw, with the oiled earth and the rust. Just working it in to those panels, creating different textures with the brush, and just ending up with this really nice, beaten, worn, weathered, industrial, huge vehicle. And yeah, I'm really happy with how it's come out. I suppose all that's needed now is just a little desert sand based base for it to sit on to make it look more at home. But maybe I can do that in a future project, because I don't really have anything suitable to make that at the moment. But yeah, let's have a closer look at some of these details. So all of this equipment is the harvesting parts, I assume. So I added a little bit more orange down here just to indicate that's where all the spice is going. Didn't pay too much attention to the bottom side of these tracks for obvious reasons. And near the front, didn't really focus too much on detailing up paint-wise. Just used the various washes and just let the detail in the mould do most of the work, and that's come out quite nice. And yeah, a lot of the streaking down the side there. This looks like some kind of hangar bay or some sort of door that opens, or maybe it's some sort of vent. Not quite sure there. The markings, I quite like the fact that they're kind of a pale pinkish colour. Not quite sure how well that comes out on camera, but yeah, it's a nice little colour there. And yeah, I really like the oil staining that I did on the back, the smoke and the exhaust. And the port side there, more streaking, weathering there. I was really pleased with how the top came out. Some really nice settled sand in all of the recesses, and all of the different textured panels, and distressed metal effect. The dust, the sand, the spice, and the exhaust and soot, it's all kind of settled in there quite nicely. And yeah, so it may be a tiny little kit, but packed with the detail, this is really fun to paint up, and it makes a nice little display piece to add to the collection. Yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think of the final result. If you're planning to get one, if you're going to get any of the other Dune kits. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see people build those up. They're starting to make the rounds on the internet now. And yeah, I just wish they made slightly bigger ones. Meng have done some bigger sci-fi kits in the past from movies, so it would have been nice to have a really nice big chunky model to work on, but still I'm glad we got what we did. And yeah, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.